On behalf of DCT's Srinivasa Sinai Dempo College of Commerce and Economics, I extend a warm welcome to each of you to our Faculty Development Program. This event is organized in collaboration with prestigious institutions, including Chanakya University in Bengaluru, Choice College of Arts and Commerce in Pune, Swami Sajanand College of Commerce and Management in Gujarat, and Dempe College of Arts and Science in Goa. In education, as in life, we often face hurdles that seem unsurmountable. Yet, like the lotus that blooms beautifully even in muddy waters, we have the ability to rise above challenges and thrive. As the educational landscape evolves, we adapt, innovate, and achieve what once felt beyond reach. Together, we create a space to explore transformative ideas, share valuable experiences, and strengthen our dedication to shaping a brighter future. Through this shared journey, we aim to inspire one another and unlock new possibilities in education. To officially commence today's session, I would now like to invite our principal, Professor Dr. Manoj Kamath, to share a few words. Sir,
Hi,
over to
very
you.
good evening to all of you. Professor Dr. Vipul Mathur ji, who has joined us from Delhi, currently based at Delhi. Professor Ravindranath Pai, the coordinator of this program. My colleague Neha Mapari, the assistant coordinator of this program. Tania Shirodkar, the coordinator of the BBA program, and all associated institutions who are with us. The four of them prominently, the Chanakya University from Bangalore, Sri Sahjananda College Autonomous from Bhavnagar in Gujarat. We have Choice College from Pune. We have our sister concern college, Dempo Charities Trust, Dempe College of Arts and Science from Penjim. We are SS Dempo College of Commerce and Economics from Kujera Bambolim. Now, all these institutions have come together this evening and then last 5 evenings just for knowledge sharing. Utilize this time for acquainting ourselves with some of the latest developments in technology and how could technology assist us. In the same line of thinking today, I'm very happy and privileged to be welcoming Professor Dr. Vipul Ji Mathur. Vipul Mathur ji has been associated with IIM Calcutta for some time and coordinating their research, coordinating their extensive, extension programs in terms of teacher training or executive development programs in the area of finance, research, and technology. Professor Mathur will be introduced separately, but then I take this privilege to welcome Professor Mathur on this platform. Now, this platform is a get-together of academia, primarily college teachers teaching the BCom and the BBAs and the MCom, MBA kind of programs, at least in these four states. And roughly we have close to almost 100, people attending this program every day. We are close to 160 registrations. And in addition to this online attendance, we are recording the lectures given by our resource persons so that it is available to us at our disposal whenever we need. Maybe we need it for our further reference as well. So all associated joining us every day evening. Today is the sixth such evening all of you have joined. Of course, the last day, 7 days on Monday evening at 6 o'clock, where we all join together, listen to the experts, try to follow their advice, and understand that this is peer-to-peer learning. We are learning from our peers, and we hope to take this particular our new teaching forms with new technological advances so that we benefit students. Today it's an interesting session where we could discuss about how we engage with the new resource which has taken the world by its storm, AI, GPT, or generative AI, and how do we look at such technologies or such tools as academic assistance for our teachers. So, Professor Mathur, with your extensive expertise in mathematics, in finance, in economic policy, in the use of technology, I believe that you are the right person to tell us how technology could benefit teachers at all ends, and then we disseminate the right information and knowledge to the students in a meaningful and engaging way. Congratulations to all of you for being the part of all this. Thanks to everyone for giving us this opportunity. Professor Mathur will be introduced in a minute, just for those audience who haven't heard our conversation just 2 minutes back, and then we start. So thank you, Neha. I believe you are here.
Thank you,
Yes, sir.
Professor Kamath. Thank
Thank you,
you for
sir.
the warm introduction. I am delighted to be here and I really appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Neha, over to you.
Yes. Hello, everyone. It's my honor to introduce Dr. Vipul Mathur today. Dr. Mathur is an entrepreneur and has been a former faculty at IIM Calcutta. He holds a PhD in economics from the IIM Bangalore and a BTech in mechanical engineering from IIT Delhi. He's renowned for his teaching styles and has been consistently ranked among the top faculty at IIM Calcutta. He has been featured in the prestigious list of the Faculty of the Year list. His research on macroeconomics, financial markets, banking has been published in leading academic and practitioner journals. He's also been listed in journals such as Corporate Finance, as well as platforms like the World Bank, Blogs, and Forbes. Dr. Mathur has taught a wide range of subjects, including those covering financial markets, macroeconomics, business cycles, monetary economics, and artificial intelligence. He has also led this effort of introducing one of India's first educational program for the educators, introducing AI and using large language models, and how do you go about deploying AI agents. In addition to his academic achievements, Dr. Mathur has also gotten a significant corporate experience. He has worked with consulting in countries such as the US, UK, and India. He has also worked in organizations and dealt with roles related to FX and bonds trading for a multinational bank. Thank you, sir. Over to you.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction. Can I begin now? Shall I begin? All right. So thank you very much for this opportunity, Professor Ravindranath, Professor Manoj. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I'm delighted to be here. I welcome all the participants, and the topic for my presentation is essentially trying to understand and reimagine the role of faculty in a world that is going to be besotted with AI agents, and particularly at the moment, the generative AI. I'd like to sort of, recall an incident that happened just a while back. I was taking a visiting class at a prominent business school. And I happened to ask a class of 70 odd students who were undergoing this summer placements, and some of them were dejected because they were not getting placed and so on. I asked them that, look, as a show of hands, how many of you think that you can contribute more than ChatGPT as of today? Okay, the ChatGPT, the Omni model. And guess what? Out of 70 odd students, only 4 hands went up. And when I inquired those 4 people, I heard, responses like, I am good at choreography that ChatGPT is not, to which, of course, I said that, just wait for 6 months and it's going to get much better at even these things. So this is a reality that we are dealing with today. If you really think very hard about it, the students who are sitting in the classroom and undergoing this MBA education, they do not feel confident enough that they have anything special to add relative to what ChatGPT is already offering. In a world like that, it is not only the students who get affected, but also the faculty. And it is a world like that that we have to understand first before we can start really finding our place in it. So this presentation is my effort to bring all of that together. I'm going to start with the large canvas of the technological history of the world that we know. And then I'm going to zero on to the AI and the opportunity that it provides, the unique aspects of it. And within that, I'm going to narrow down again to how a faculty could actually use this technology in order to increase their productivity. So feel free to ask me anything, and we can certainly keep some minutes at the end of the presentation to discuss any questions or any opinions that you might have. So, being an economist that I am, I try my best not to use math, but this is a single equation description of the entire history of economic growth. So what you have here are basically these 3 factors of production: physical capital, labor, and land. And all of these 3 being mixed together using the existing technology that we have. Capital Y is really the total output in an economy. Okay, so this is a very it's an abstraction which basically tells us that given your level of physical capital holdings, given your skilled labor, and given your land, and given the existing institute of technology, this is what you can produce. Alpha, beta, and gamma are just basically coefficients at the moment. Now, if you view the world, if you view the history of the world through the lens of this equation, then you can bucketize the entire timeline of the last 2000 odd years into very distinct patterns with respect to this equation. So if you think of the period starting from all the way to 0 AD to 1300s, there was no physical capital production, so to speak. We were largely an economy that was working on the model of a hunter-gatherer. Magic was the dominant theme at that time, and we were organized as small tribes. Land was our only factor of production, hunting and gathering as being the two major economic activities at that time. Fast forwarded to another 400 years, we develop the knowledge of cultivation. We develop how agriculture has to be timed with respect to seasons, the knowledge of irrigation, the seeds, etc. And therefore, using some skilled labor and land, we are able to convert our hunter-gatherer economy into a more systematic agrarian economy. Magic is replaced, and now the society is centered more around religion. And we have the governing view of Malthusian, which is basically that because the land availability is limited, if land were the only chief factor of production, then the per capita availability of this resource is going to significantly die out, and therefore we are all headed to some sort of a doomsday. Okay. People who are familiar with this view would immediately recognize that this was basically Malthusian prediction until the early 18th century, 1770s and thereabouts. We invent the steam engine. James Watt essentially builds on this new common engine. And for the first time, we develop something called as a physical capital that is not in limited supply, but we can manufacture more capital from capital. And now we have a different equation, which is being powered by steam here. So steam becomes that technology which ushers us into this first industrial revolution. Mechanization of certain industries takes place, particularly mining and transport. So in bits and pieces, we have steam engines doing some sort of a disruption in these pockets of the economy. On the social political front, we have formation of nation states, the American Declaration of Independence, and so on happen around the late 1770s. The idea of constitution also starts coming into being. So this is to say that the society starts organizing itself in different ways than it used to do previously. Now, it takes another 100 years for us to really discover the next big technology, which is electricity. And it's not just electricity, but it's a combination of electricity, internal combustion engine, the Wright brothers coming in the early 1900s, the Ferraris and the Volkswagen, etc., trying to experiment with these early cars, and assembly line production, the Ford idea, etc. All of that plays out in this period of the next 100 years, where our production largely becomes much more industrialized in nature. Okay, so from an agrarian society, we are now a much more industrialized society, and some people might recognize the Coase famous boundary of a firm argument here. This period also witnesses the rise of democratic institutions, the empire of the Great Britain coming to an end, a lot of independent nation states coming into existence, and so on. And now we have another type of physical capital, which is physical capital 1+2. So the two part really basically means that we have physical capital that can make use of electricity and other kind of stuff that we have as technology at that point in time. Come with 1970s, we have another third industrial revolution, which is largely the invention of silicon chip. IBM invents silicon chip, and we have a new form of production in society. And now we are producing things on computers, and largely it is the start and the advent of the information age. At the same time, globalization happens, and the banking and financial markets also expand. So by the time we arrive into 2010, it's a fairly interconnected world, and we have already seen one IT revolution happen, and 2010 is when we also see a sub part of IT also getting invented in this form of social media, and the impetus is on making things more digital. So we see a rise of digital efficiency on the same physical capital, etc. So this is all going on, and we have these largely these three industrial revolutions. But in November 2022, ChatGPT releases, and ChatGPT essentially takes the world by storm. And within a week, it has these millions users already signed up on it. And the period thereafter has increasingly seen rapid rise of stuff related to AI. If you're reading newspapers, there's AI everywhere. If you're on the job portals, there is AI everywhere. So suddenly the entire flavor has sort of changed. Now, we have seen three industrial revolutions before, and it is not as if they have been any different. But this particular one is slightly different, and it represents the breakdown of this particular equation. Okay? It represents what we call as a moment of singularity. Now, what is a singularity? A singularity, essentially, in very simple terms, it's a moment of time when your conventional lenses break down, your traditional ways of doing things break down. And it's a moment that really represents not just incremental change, but a radical change. Now, why is this technology radically different from the technology of a steam engine, or the technology of electricity, or the technology of silicon chip? And the answer to that is something that we'll see in a minute, but let's see, how did it all sort of begin? Okay. Anybody who recognizes this snapshot from a movie? If you have your mics on, I don't know. So this is the main star here is sitting besides this wooden box, which looks like a very rudimentary calculator or a computer, is none other than Benedict Cumberbatch, and the movie is called as Imitation Game. It's essentially a movie on Alan Turing, and he plays the character of Alan Turing. And the reason why I mentioned this movie is because in 1950, Alan Turing wrote a paper, and the title of the first section, the beginning section of that paper, was the same title of the movie, which is The Imitation Game. And for the first time, he proposed a question that, can machines think? Okay. And this really is a definite beginning that one can trace in the history of artificial intelligence. Although the field of artificial intelligence had existed in bits and pieces before, but formally it is only in 1950 and thereafter, the immediate years after that, that the researchers actually coined the term artificial intelligence. Now, artificial intelligence per se is not something that is a new thing to happen in 2022. It has had its fair share of history, especially over the last 70 years. But it has, of course, gone through its ebbs and flows. There have been some exciting moments over the last 70 years, and there also have been a period of extended lull where artificial intelligence did not receive much of research attention. But around 2015 and 14, there is something that changed, and there is a new way of computational architecture that was proposed, which is called as the transformer. And around 15, 16, 17 is the time period when that really becomes a big inflection point in the development of AI. So the GPT that we saw in November 2022 was not something that was done overnight, but it was essentially the GPT 3.5, and there were already GPT-1, GPT-2, and GPT-3 that had been released subsequently, but which were not nearly as impressive as the version that we all got our hands dirty on in November 2022. But over the last 7-8 years preceding 2022, there had been a silent revolution on AI that had been brewing up, and that ultimately culminated into this ChatGPT. Now, I was saying that we have had industrial revolutions before, and every industrial revolution, if you think about it, has been a generation-defining moment, right? People have acquired skills for that particular technology. Their older skills had become irrelevant. They had to reinvent themselves. They went on to work, the entire generation or 2 or even 3 generations went on to work with under the same larger architecture of the technology. And so is this, but this time it's slightly different. And the reason why this is different is because for the first time in history, we have a machine that can improve itself. Now, if you think about a steam engine, if you think about an internal combustion engine, if you think about a silicon chip, right, all of these are great pieces of scientific invention. But they are just pieces of invention which are going to sit on your desk and remain the same for the next 1,000 odd years. Your computer will remain the same. Right? It's not going to significantly improve by itself. But for the first time, we have a technology, the artificial intelligence technology, which of course is backed by machine learning, is founded on the idea that there is a machine that can learn from itself and can self-improve. Okay, so this is what makes this particular industrial revolution very different from the three that have preceded it. Now, the greatest paradox about this thing is that at this moment, as of this moment, it is the most complicated technology, yet also the most trivial technology 5 years down the line. Imagine those, those early Nokia phones, right? I'm sure some of you would have seen those early Nokia phones, even if you would have been impressed by the battery life, etc. The entire design of it and the entire architecture of it, the whole instrumentation of it, etc., looked very rudimentary to us, right? It looks very rudimentary to us from the vantage point of the phones that we deal with today, the Android and the Apple iPhones. Right? So imagine this, the technology that we have today, the ChatGPT engine that we have today, is the most impressive thing we have got. Okay? But 5 years down the line, it's going to look very silly. Now, what we have today already impresses us a lot. So you can already imagine what's going to possibly happen in the next 5 years, even if you were to extrapolate just the trends that you have seen in other industrial revolutions, especially the communication and IT revolution, right? Every year has been significantly different. And when you add up, things over a decade, then there's a remarkable change between 2010 and let's say 2020. In the same way, this technology that we have today is going to be remarkably more efficient, remarkably more versatile in the next 5 years than it is today. And that's a paradox, because what we have today is already the most complicated thing that we could muster and is already fairly impressive. So what awaits in the next 5 years is anybody's guess. Now, why are we a little alarmed about this, right? Why should it really? Why should we really think about it in such ways and think with such alarm? The reason for that is because it is not the intelligence that really alarms us, right? Machines have been intelligent for a while. Your computer is fairly intelligent even before ChatGPT. If you look at your Excel sheets, it can compute, an average of 20,000 rows and calculate charts and plot you different bar graphs, etc., in a matter of seconds. Right? It's already fairly intelligent. And if you really extend it all the way to, let's say, computer programs, which have been used since 1990s in the game of chess, they have been super intelligent. So it's definitely not something new. It's not the intelligence part of it that scares us or that alarms us. What is really alarming about it, that for the first time, you have a technology that is ordinary, that has the same fallibility as a human. Okay. When you talk to ChatGPT, when you write and have the conversation with ChatGPT, it appears very human-like. Okay. And that is what alarms us, because here is something that has almost the same mediocrity and fallibility as a human. Okay. And therefore, the natural question that arises at that point is that, could it therefore replace humans, and particularly in several tasks, as we'll see shortly. Now, I'm sure all of you already know about it, what is really at the heart of it. It's largely the prediction machines, right? But just a very, very, quick 2 minutes primer on it. If I just ask you that, if you see these three words in the sequence, curiosity, killed, and I ask you to predict the fourth word, I'm sure most of you are going to basically say the word cat, right? Now, in itself, curiosity killed that cat is a phrase that doesn't mean anything. Okay, we don't even know the origins of it, but we have all heard it growing up. In different points in our life, we have come to use this phrase. We have known this phrase, and we know this phrase, right? And the reason why I picked up this phrase is because by itself, it doesn't really carry any deep meaning. Okay, it is something that we have just memorized. It's the same way that the ChatGPT also works. just as we have trained ourselves, of course, not deliberately, but just subconsciously, we have trained ourselves on this phrase, and we can predict accurately what comes after these three letters. ChatGPT also has an engine that has been trained on billions of data. Okay, and this is, of course, if you ask ChatGPT what killed the cat, it will say that it's just curious or inquisitiveness that can lead somebody to trouble. Okay, so ChatGPT also has been trained on millions and billions of data based on the architecture of our neural networks. The entire branch of statistical analysis that takes neural networks as its main pivotal lens through which they organize and understand statistical data takes inspiration from biology, where a neuron can be classified as a schematic diagram involving dendrites and synapses and so on, which has a statistical analog as as a perceptron, where there are different inputs that are coming in weighted by a certain thing, and then there is a signaling function fx which will become activated or deactivated depending upon its threshold. Okay. Now we know the mechanics of it. At least we have some vague idea of it, right? But the question really to ask is that, okay, so what? Why does it work, and why should we be alarmed about it, right? And the answer to that is not this, but all that you really need is text. Now, this is a very important thing. It looks very simple, but it is really at the heart of why this technology is so good. If you think about it, right? If you think about, let's say, movies, right? Now you're watching movies, and I'm sure all of you have your favorite actors. Let's pick up a versatile actor for no other reason but because he has done different roles. Let's pick up Amir Khan. Okay. Amir Khan has done a role in Lagan, where he plays that villager. He has also done a role in Three Idiots, right, where he plays that college student. Now, when you're watching Three Idiots, you're absorbed by that Amir Khan's character. But when you're watching Lagan, you're absorbed by that character of Amir Khan. It's the same Amir Khan, but never in those 3 hours that you are watching that movie will you really ever feel that, hey, hang on a second, this was the same Amir Khan of Dil Chahta, is the same Amir Khan of Qayamat Se Qayamat, is the same Amir Khan of, what is he really doing as a villager here? You never feel that. And the reason is because great actors, good actors, they embrace that character. And how do they really do it? It all starts with a piece of paper that they read. Okay, a piece of paper on which that character has been written by, let's say, the screenplay writer or the director or the story writer and so on. Okay, so they're reading text, okay, and they're trying to embrace whatever is written as text, and then they act it out. Okay. There is so much that the text can capture that can make the Lagan Amir very different from the Dil Chahta Amir, very different from Three Idiots Amir. So if you were to do this exercise in reverse, okay, and you ask that, if I have to recreate a person, how should I go about it? Well, you recreate that person by writing or transcribing that person down to just text. And it's incredible how much information you can really capture about a person through just text. Now, a lot of people will say, well, that whatever you write about me cannot really capture the essence of me. And that's right. That's probably right at some level. But if you really take this logically further and further and further, you'll find that it's incredible the level of detail you can really write in a text. So yes, somebody who has a 5,000-page textual information written about you can get some idea about you, and maybe not 100% you, but can get very close to being you. It can get very dangerously close to almost mimicking you at 98%, 99%, that sort of thing. And over time, if you allow for these interactions to have some sort of a feedback loop, you can imagine that you can almost replicate a person. Okay. So now, if you think about it, that everything that is there in the world, suppose that you could transcribe everything into text, which, by the way, already has been done. If you look at the internet, if you look at the libraries that we have around the world, if you look at all sorts of textual information that we have contained in either digital form or non-digital form, it is all that information and knowledge that we have already captured about the state of the world. And if I had an engine basically running on this massive amount of textual data, that engine training itself on this textual data can become practically as good as anybody else. So, and this is basically, Descartes, who said that cogito ergo sum, I think, therefore I am. And in a way, your thought process, your doubts about your existence prove your existence. The same way, text is all that you really need to capture anything that happens. Okay, so just taking a step back, this thing is not just about chat GPT and generative AI and the little chats that we tend to do. The principle behind it working is very, very strong. It is getting trained on textual data, and text is all that you need to capture the world. Yeah. So speaking of this Latin and Greek, the cogito ergo sum, let's now zoom into how is this going to fundamentally reshape the fabric of the sector that we all belong to, which is the education sector. Now, let's begin with a slight broad stroke sort of a history about education. You roll all the way back to 500 BC, and you're sitting in ancient Greece, and we've all heard of the thinkers at that time: Aristotle, Plato, Socrates. Starting in the reverse order, and these are essentially thinkers that we have come to know from that particular period. And we also know that Aristotle was a tutor of Alexander the Great, right, who died a very early death, but in the few years that he in the very few years that he lived, he conquered almost half the world, and famously tutored on a one-to-one fashion by Aristotle, right? So that was literally one-on-one tutoring. Okay, a body of knowledge, a body of specialized knowledge being passed from Aristotle to Alexander, okay, in a very one-to-one setting. Now, you roll back a little forward to Middle Ages, and you see that there's the rise of monasteries, where you have a chosen few monks studying, or that knowledge being transferred. And around 1200s, 1100s, etc., you also see the rise of scholasticism, right? Scholars rising up, but these were all few and far between. By the time you enter into 1400s and the entire 300 period around it, it sees invention of printing press. There's a great Renaissance movement that has happened. So knowledge as a source of enlightenment, as a source of opportunity, spreads around. But it is not until the 1880s that mass spread, the mass level spread of knowledge actually happens. And for the first time, we have a factory model of classrooms. Because remember, if you go back to that equation that I showed you, 1770s is also the time period when American Declaration of Independence has happened. The democratic institutions are coming into shape, and we are still an agrarian society. So it's only around the middle part of 19th century, the 1850s, etc., that things start spreading, and you start looking at a free public education and similar causes. 40 years later, the idea of standardized testing starts. This starts primarily from the Ivy League institutions, in particular Harvard, where the Harvard administrator decides to open up admissions based on rankings on a standardized test. So the first SAT gets conducted in 1926, and this is an era of IQ test, and remember Einstein is also part of this era. Not germane to our discussion, but it's quite a happening time. There's a Great Depression that's unfolding in the background. There is almost 2 world wars that are going to happen in the neighborhood of these years, etc. By the time computers come in, and you have essentially an interconnected world where people are applying and migrating because of educational opportunities. There are tests that provide you international benchmarking, the GMATs, the GREs of the world, and so on and so forth, right? So education by now is a full-fledged industry, and there's a factory model of education that has now been completely, experimented with, and now is a full-fledged model of its own. But what's really happening in this factory model is that somewhere the efficiency that happens in a one-on-one interaction, which is essentially something that I have on the next slide, gets lost. Okay, and what do I mean by that? So around 1980, Benjamin Bloom, who is one of the educators, researches into this particular problem, and he finds that if you have a classroom and you're teaching with just one teacher in that classroom, then you probably have a normal distribution, which would look like the first normal distribution, the extreme left one. And the red line here denotes the median or the mean, whichever you prefer, would be the performance of the students. Now, if you were to replace this mode of teaching by something called as mastery learning, where the instructor is teaching in a smaller group, so it's not as big a class of 60 odd students, but there are tutorials which are being conducted in smaller groups of 8, 10, etc. Then you find that the distribution of marks or the assessment marks actually shifts to the right with a noticeably higher mean or median. And if you were to take it even further and appoint a tutor on a one-to-one basis to every student, who can then work out, a lot of student-level doubts and find out the gaps in understanding, etc., you find that the entire distribution actually shifts pretty much to the right. So much so that the mean of the two distributions differ by 2 times the standard deviation of the first distribution. And this is what he famously dubbed as the 2 sigma problem. So the idea really is that it is not as if the students are lacking in their IQ or lacking in their understanding. It's just because the factory model of education that we have all come to embrace is something that is clearly not an optimal solution. Okay, but there's another side of the story also. The factory model came to be embraced because you had to really open up the world of education to the entire public. Right? Before that, it was only limited to a group of elite. Now, if you're opening up something to the wider public, the ideas of costs really come into play. The factory model, which is the classroom model, is a very cost-effective way of imparting that education. And one-on-one mentorship, you can imagine, is a very costly method of imparting education, because now for every 60 students you have, you will need 60 teachers. Okay. Besides making sure that all 60 of them are more or less consistent or are not widely different from each other. Besides that problem, suddenly your costs have scaled up by a factor of 60. Okay, that's a problem. So even though Benjamin Bloom and several others thereafter unearthed this particular interesting insight that classroom model was a suboptimal way of teaching, they couldn't really do much about it. Until in bits and pieces that there was content on digital media that was now available, and so on and so forth. People could learn on their own time, Khan Academy being one of the famous examples. But frankly, the Khan Academy was just a video that was just playing out to you. The most that you could possibly do was just pause that video and then take it up at your own speed. But there was no real back and forth that was happening as would happen in a one-on-one tutoring framework. Now, all of that changes today. Today, what we have is this GPT, and I'm sure that most of you have already interacted with ChatGPT. The ChatGPT is a back and forth engine, and it can adapt to your level of understanding. I can write to ChatGPT and say, well, explain this paper in finance as if I'm a 15-year-old. Okay, and it's going to explain and do a very good job at it. Okay. And in the next moment, I could ask it something again from a different field, let's say music. It's going to do that. So for the first time, you have an opportunity to actually tutor in a one-to-one fashion, at the same time in a very cost-effective way, right? It's just $20 per month sort of a subscription at the moment. So we are able to break this trade-off that happens between efficiency and cost in the classroom model, because now we have a technology that will, on a one-to-one fashion, not scale on the cost dimension as we used to have before. So this is a very unique inflection point in the entire education sector. It's going to affect all of us, regardless of whether we believe it today or not. It's going to affect. It already has started impacting. In fact, for example, if I take my own example, I tend to go to ChatGPT, do a lot of back and forth if I am trying to understand something, and basically resort to it as my own tutor, right? And increasingly, people are going to have these GPT agents with them, which will always, which can serve as your Aristotles, just by at your side. Okay, you ask them anything and they will know it for you. So it's going to reshape a lot of things that we have taken for granted about education. In fact, just recently I was having this discussion, and in the discussion, one of the things came up, and we said, well, look, sometimes when I type to ChatGPT and I'm being lazy, I don't type full words, I don't type full sentences, I've broken, the structure, phrases are, in just phrases, etc. But somehow the GPT just understands, okay, and it replies to me in fairly lucid, full sentence structure. And suppose that you have that, right? And suppose that you're communicating with a friend of yours, and both of you are using some interface of an AI. So the only language that you need to learn today is not even English. You don't need to really learn your nouns and pronouns, your, particularly your gerunds and etc. All that you need to know is to be able to express yourself sufficiently enough, the keyword being sufficiently enough to this AI engine. Okay, and that AI engine can then take over and complete your sentences, fill in the missing parts, and then pass over that as a lucid communication to the other party. So a lot of these things are certainly going to change, and clearly, if you extend this idea to Bloom's taxonomy, I'm sure some of you might have seen this at some point. If you rank these tasks, these broad level categories into the kind of cognitive load that they demand, you can easily see that a lot of the low level tasks, which are about remembering factual information, for example, or even understanding, let's say, understanding the laws of motion, etc., even applying them, are all tasks that you can leave to just the ChatGPT to do it. Now, disclaimer, I'm keep on saying ChatGPT, but I'm really talking about this family of AI engines, which includes ChatGPT, includes Gemini, includes Llama, etc., etc. And you can leave the high cognitive task, which is creative task, etc., to ChatGPT and so on, but not for long. Now, with that being the environment, how is the faculty role going to get impacted? Okay. Now, as a teacher, I definitely ask that of myself when I'm standing and delivering a class on, let's say, I'm talking about take the liberty of using a topic from economics. Let's say I'm talking about Keynesian theory, right? Now, I know that I can go to ChatGPT right now, and I can basically ask it to role play as John Maynard Keynes. Okay, and I can literally have a conversation with Keynes in his typical prose, etc. And I can do that at a costless thing, right? I can also ask ChatGPT to explain to me the Keynesian theory as if it would do to a 15-year-old. I can also ask it to explain it to me diagrammatically, algebraically, intuitively, and so on and so forth, right? And it will do all of these quite well. Now, in a world like that, what is my value as a teacher? Okay, what additional value do I really bring to the class? And this is a question that's definitely going to get asked. I mean, it's not being asked explicitly today, but you fast forward it to 2 years, and you are definitely going to get asked that question, because everybody will be using this in a very pervasive way. Now, in an environment like that, therefore, the role of the faculty has to be brutally re-examined, and particularly areas and pockets where we can improve faculty productivity so that they can devote their time to compete in a world which is being greatly crowded out by AI. They will have to also rely on the same AI. Now, what are AI agents? Now, as the timing of this presentation is really nice because OpenAI is going to come up with its agent in just about 2 or 3 months. Okay, and 6 months down the line, each of us will know intuitively what an AI agent is. Okay, but think of them as your assistant. Think of them as assistants who are highly pliable in terms of the personalization and customization that they can offer, and they're also, of course, powered by the same generative intelligence that we spoke about, which was based out of the textual data and so on. Okay, these are agents that can do certain tasks for you just by a single prompt. Okay, so in very simple terms, they're basically your assistants, which are powered by the same intelligence. Now, how can faculty make use of these AI agents with the state of technology that we have as of today? Now, to understand that, you have to literally zoom into this, and this is, I think, a really important slide, and this is not just for faculty, but for any other profession that you're involved in. When we think of jobs, right, and usually we ask ourselves, well, I'm a plumber, is GPT going to replace me? I'm a doctor, is it going to replace me? Of course, robots can't replace it. I'm a principal, that is the wrong way to think. The granularity at which you have to think about is every job as a summation of tasks. And then you line up that entire vector of tasks into this particular dimension of automatability. Okay, automatable is actually a proper English word. It's not so popular, I think, but it's a word. But it gets the idea across. Things which are highly automatable are on the one end of the spectrum, and things which are least automatable are on the other end. Okay. Now, if you were to look at the tasks that you perform day in and day out across the quarters, across the semesters, and across the year, you can certainly come up with some ordering along this particular spectrum. And you can be very sure that the tasks which are highly automatable, the ChatGPT is going to eat it for breakfast very soon. Okay. So soon enough, you will therefore have to shift either willingly or unwillingly towards the part of the spectrum that is least automatable. Another way to think about these things and get a good idea about it is to think of this 2x2 matrix, where you have routine and non-routine, and you have cognitive and manual. Okay, so think of these 2x2 business, standard business matrix. So tasks that are very routine in nature and which require manual labor. For example, the file work for admissions. It's a routine task. It happens every year, and if you have multiple programs running in, possibly every month. Taking attendance is a very routine task that happens almost daily, and is entirely a manual thing. Still in many of the, if not attendance, at least class participation and the variants of it, so on. Then routine cognitive skills are taking lectures, grading students, answering their queries. You do the same thing year after year, semester after semester, but it is not something that requires manual skill. It requires thinking and cognitive application. Then there are non-routine manual things. Organizing a conference, you have to run from pillar to post, take printouts, organize workshops, so on and so on, call the speakers, etc. And then non-routine cognitive things is course curriculum. Once every 5 years, you're going to redesign your entire course curriculum. Once every few months, you're going to write a research proposal. So there are all of these tasks which can be bucketed into these 4 things. And you can see from here that routine tasks, which are especially cognitive, okay, are going to get automated the first. Okay. Things that we do on this laptop, things that we do on this computer, okay, quite frankly, anything that we do on this laptop, the ChatGPT already does it better than us and will likely actually do it much, much better in a few months. As opposed to things that we do with our hands, if you work with your hands, then those are things that are still on the least automatable part of the spectrum. And those are tasks that will still be some distance away before they get automated. Now, this is all bad news, but there is some good news in this. The good news is that if you were to pick some tasks from the highly automatable section, and suppose you can outsource it to a personalized AI agent, then you can free up that much of your time and devote your time to other things which require much higher cognitive load. Okay, and also, if not more, either routine or non-routine, but definitely higher cognitive load. Now, I've just sort of broken it down in terms of lists. So if you were to really think of the tasks of a faculty in the original and traditional three-dimensional view of teaching, research, and administration, you can literally break it down as these different tasks. And you can then rearrange them into how automatable they are. So for example, writing course outline. Okay, I remember, as a 8 years back when I had joined IIM Calcutta, I had to write course outline. Accreditation agencies were coming in, and there was this big format that you had to write course outline. There were multiple columns that had to be filled in, and so on and so forth. We spent a great deal of time, okay, researching it, finding references, subtopics, topics, etc. Okay, it took us a lot of time to really get a first decent draft, and of course, we then improved on it, and it took a couple of iterations, and we're mostly done. But today, I can get the first decent draft of a course outline within a few seconds. Okay. Of course, it wouldn't be a final thing, but I will have to sort of pitch in and do it. But can I get for every subtopic in macroeconomics, can I get a corresponding interesting historical reading, a historical news fact, news article? Yes, I can. Okay, very easily. So that bit has not only become faster, but I'm afraid to admit has also become better, because frankly, as an individual, my reach, the ChatGPT's reach surpasses my own reach. Okay, I may not be aware of a particular economic event that took place in 1964, but hey, ChatGPT could be. Okay, so that thing not only becomes faster, but much better. Similarly for lesson plan, class notes, okay? Question paper, well, 50-50, okay? Doubt resolution, you can train something and then build on it. And I'll show you a real live demonstration about how you can go about building it. Similarly for research, if you have to write a new research proposal, of course, the idea of the research, the boundaries of the study and so on has to be generated from your own original thought, okay? But in terms of just writing it down in a structured format, filling in the gaps wherever there are, it can easily do it. Literature review, you'll be surprised that there are these startups that have come up which can do literature review for you in a matter of seconds, and they can show it to you quite visually in a very nice way. The different nodes of the related literature, the ones that are really relevant and the ones that are peripheral relevance, etc. You could also, one of the most painful thing as a researcher is to write LaTeX code. You could also convert a lot of your Word written, your research papers written in Word into fantastic LaTeX code and run it in a matter of seconds and be done with it. Okay, so there is a lot of help that's already available. Similarly, for administration, you can take meeting minutes. Agents can book a meeting for you. They can answer your day-to-day admin queries, etc., etc. Now, this is all, most of this that I have here, okay, is something that is easily possible within an year. Okay. As I mentioned, OpenAI is going to launch its agentic model called the operator, I think, in just a couple of weeks. And then it would set, it would set flurry these different agents that you would have dedicated to all of these things. But this is to tell you that the storm is coming. And even with the limited the chatbot facility that we have, you can still get a grip on most of these sufficiently well to know how things will actually shape up. Now, as I mentioned, you can split up into teaching, research, and administrative, lesson planning, feedback, adaptive learning, a large scale, just sort of skipping through these data analysis, and you'll be surprised, at least I was surprised by the extent of data analysis that it can do. You can dump in 20,000 rows of unstructured CSV data on it, okay? And not tell it anything else except that, well, find out some interesting insights for me from the data. And sure enough, it is going to, do a lot of permutation and combination of different variables, scatter plots, so on and so forth. And we'll figure out eventually, some interesting statistical insights for you. You could also get extensive help for your coding and analytics, etc. So there's plenty of stuff that it can already do. Similarly, admin duties, attending to queries, meetings, etc., can be also outsourced. Now, what it does eventually is that it streamlines your workflows, okay? And you're able to prioritize items. And that is something that is quite a thing if you are a faculty, because you have these, you on a day-to-day basis, you're always straddled with these things that demand your urgent attention all the time, okay? But they're not really that important. So there's a slim distinction between what is important and what is urgent, but constantly you'll find that, especially if you are also handling a position as an administrator in some capacity, always these tasks that will be very urgent on that given day. But you will never really find that they add up to anything important at the end of the academic year or so on. So there's a lot of prioritization that can happen, which can leave you with sufficient time to focus on things that will that you can deliver much better in a world that is already being completely eaten up by this ChatGPT. So I'll give you a very a screenshot of this particular thing that I was building, just in case if my code doesn't run, but I'll see if I can open that up. It's always a little tricky with Google Meet, but let me see. Am I able to share this? This Safari window? Can anyone help me out there? Just 1 second. Let me. All right. Are you able to see this? Yeah. Okay, great. What you see here is that this is basically a sort of a thing that I was doing on Replit. And if you read through this text, okay, this is essentially, I mean, I'm not going to sort of walk you through the entire code of it. That's it's all there, and it can get a little too much for our purpose at the moment, but certainly if there is interest, I'll be happy to sort of walk you through how to create such a thing. Now, what you see here in front of you is essentially a character that I've assigned to this particular bot. And I say to this that you are a professor of commerce and management, and exaggerate it and say renowned for your expertise in strategy, OB, and finance, etc. This is your teaching style. You're professional, approachable, enthusiastic, and always providing support. In teaching, you create relatable examples, you create thought-provoking questions. In research, you're meticulous about citations, etc. In administration, you're quite particular about time management, deadlines, tasks, etc. You adapt your tone with students. You are nurturing and clear researchers. You are thoughtful administrators. You are concise and solution focused. Okay, so to that level of granularity. Okay, so I give this particular character to this bot, and then I also have a bunch of data on which I have. I mean, I'm using the word train, but it's not really trained. But think of it as as the as a precursor to before it actually draws upon the chat GPT. I'm training this on some specialized data set that I have. For example, I can have my macroeconomics class notes. Okay, over the years, I had prepared some class notes of my own, and I have it as a PDF running into, let's say, 60, 70 pages. Okay, and I can train it on that. And by going through those notes, it can immediately know, the way I teach, the way I explain, the way I talk, etc., the way I write. It can also know the boundaries of the course, etc. And it can then be trained on it and be deployed as a tutor to the entire class. And if somebody has a question after the class, they can just type, their question in it, and they can get a response as if I was essentially explaining it to them, because guess what? The bot would have been trained on a text that I would have written in my own conversational style. Okay, so you could build such a thing and you could train your model. You see that here, option number 1 here. And if I say, well, okay, you need to train it. So I'll probably run it like this. And let's say I want to train it. So it enters into this training mode where it's going to train itself on the database that I've uploaded here. At the moment, it's just a demonstration exercise, so there's nothing fancy about it, but you can do a lot of things with it. So it's training itself on this data set. You can see that every PDF that it goes through is some sort of it is embracing the content of all of those PDF pages into it. And once it has trained, I can stop it, and then I run it again, and I say, well, I want to talk to this bot prof, as I've called it. I can ask a question. Ignore the warning. It's just about the model keep on updating. And I can ask a question. So I can say, well, describe yourself. Okay. Let's see what it responds. Okay. I'm a professor of commerce and management with expertise in business strategy, OB, and financial system. I'm passionate about education and innovation, and strive to make complex concepts accessible and actionable for my audience. I'm professional and approachable with a patient and enthusiastic teaching style. I also provide research support and administrative assistance, and I adapt my interaction style depending on who I'm helping. Okay. So you get the idea. And now, I have this agent, which, by the way, is still something that I'm only talking to in textual terms, but I can soon add the voice capabilities on this. And instead of typing it down, I can basically make it interact on just an audio basis. So all of that is possible, and soon enough, you will start seeing them all around you. So is there any quick question so far? I just sort of pause here. So anybody? Okay, sorry, I'm sort of overshooting the time, but Billy, I just give me, just 3-4 more minutes and I'll be done. So in this evolving educational landscape, now that we have a fair sense of how to, well, not really how to create it, because that is something that I just demonstrated to you in a very shorter way, but the ability of the AI agents to really get around these tasks, and how we can break down job into these tasks, which we can align them on a spectrum of how automatable they are, and then get on these agents to do the ones that are highly automatable, free out time and devote it elsewhere. So all of this largely is because we have, we have, things that are better, faster, and cheaper. Now, if I ask you a question about what happened in March 2020, most of you are going to tell me that lockdown happened in March 2020, right? But there's also one another thing that went quite unnoticed in March 2020. 2 weeks before the lockdown actually happened, there was already one version of the vaccine that was already in place. And that happened because the first COVID case was discovered around November and December first week of 2019. And immediately after that, they had discovered that virus. They had deployed, vaccine research into it. And by the time we are into mid-March, there was already one version of vaccine, not robust, but there was already one rough draft of it already available before the world went into lockdown. Okay? Now, that is a remarkable thing to happen. Vaccine development, if you look into the history of vaccine development and the entire production cycles around it, is easily a 5-year thing to happen. Okay? It takes 5 years to really research on average to create a vaccine, to et cetera, et cetera. But within a matter of few weeks, we were able to get the vaccine between December and March. Not the full functional vaccine, but
Dr. Vipul, you have muted yourself.
Sir, your mic is muted. Sir, hello, can you hear me? Sir, your mic is muted. We are not able to hear you right.
I sent him a text.
Manu, can you place a call up to him? Call him on a mobile and inform.
Yeah, yes, sir.
Dr. Vipul, you have muted your mic. We can't hear you. Vipul, we can't hear you.
Am I audible now?
Now audible. Yeah, now audible. Can you start whatever you have been
Sorry.
talking 5 minutes before,
Yeah.
because we didn't hear anything for the past 5 minutes.
Oh, okay. Were you able to look at the Replit thing that I was showing, the demonstration of the app?
Yes, we saw it. Afterwards,
Okay.
you got muted.
Okay, sorry. Since I'm accessing this with the browser, there seems to be some error. Anyway, so I'm audible now. So do you want me to repeat from here?
Yes. From there,
This
it will
is
be
fine.
better. This we have understood.
Okay.
We have understood.
Okay, wonderful. So anyway, I mean, in the interest of time, I can also make it shorter. But what I was saying is that in March 2020, and I'm just taking a larger view here, there is another thing that happened beside lockdown. And it was that 2 weeks before the world went into lockdown, there was already one first version of the corona vaccine that was readily available. It wasn't something that was fully functional or fully sanctioned, but we had one first draft of it within a few weeks since the first case was discovered in December 2019. And that was only possible because usually the vaccine time cycles are very large. They take about 5 years to really research and find stuff. It was possible to get to the first rough draft in just a matter of few weeks because of three things that the world had converged upon. One is better algorithms. So you are making better predictions. You have much better algorithmic structure. You have more data, both in quality and in quantity, and you have more compute power. And when all these three forces unite and there's a confluence of these three dimensions, then you have things becoming better, faster, and cheaper. And every time things have become better, faster, and cheaper, the world has changed. So largely the implications of in a world like that, and since we are in the business of training the future leaders and the future the employees or the workforce, etc., we have to also remain vigilant to the implications of what can happen in a world like that. So there are two parts to this question, and which is what is that people should learn now, what skills to pursue and what careers to pursue, and how should they really go about it. Am I audible? I just need a little bit of feedback. So audible?
No, you are audible. Yeah, we can
Okay,
see
great.
your slide
Okay,
out.
sure. Okay, the what part is something that one can get around to it by applying economics principles. So the first economics principle is that if something becomes cheap, it leads to a greater demand. And the second principle of economics is that if something has a higher demand, then the complements of that thing are also going to witness higher demand, and the substitutes are going to fall, right? Complements are things like toothbrush and toothpaste. If you have more demand for toothpaste, naturally the demand for toothbrush is also going to go up. Substitutes are things like Coke and Pepsi. So now if something has become cheap, and what has become cheap? Availability of knowledge, availability of information, availability of processed information has become cheap. So it's going to lead much greater demand of it. If it's going to lead much greater demand for it, then either you get into the business of production of it, which is the production of the technology itself, or you get in the business of production of the complements of it, right? So now, what are the substitutes and what are the complements? Complements are things which, in a world like this, are things like discretion, okay, perception, judgment, cognition. These are all complements to what ChatGPT does. It's essentially the same idea about in a world which is more complex, which is more uncertain, where there's less data, which is about products versus people, ChatGPT will therefore, and the AI world will therefore not have that skill set, because remember, its entire potency is coming in from the textual data that it has been trained on. But if there is no text available for a particular situation, okay, then you really don't have that ability. So these are complements. And where is this not available? In elements of the strategy, discretion, etc. So you become much better at those things. Substitutes, of course, you've been through it, things which are highly automatable, things which can be codified as just instructions and have a reasonable amount of training data available are the first ones to get being substituted. Okay, and also over time, because people are smart, they're going to direct ChatGPT and other AI engines to do things which they find repulsive to do, risky to do. Okay. Now, the traditional model of the college and the university setting that we are all used to is basically a model that we know was set up in the early 1900s, right, when the standardized tests were had been brought into place. And in a world like that, a 3-year degree or a 4-year degree would set one for a long haul in some industry. If you were an engineer graduating in 1980s, you could pick up a career in a public sector and retire as the top guy in the next 35, 40 years. And one degree alone would set you up for a 30, 40-year-old long career. But today, not as much. Careers change over time. And clearly, in the last 10 years and 15 years as well, we have seen how new jobs have come up. Back when I was graduating, there was no job such as a data scientist. There was not even a word called as data scientist. But in the years that I, did my graduation, did my PhD and doctoral studies, and of course, then you had emergence of data scientists, and today data scientist is a big buzzword. Okay, so jobs change over time. It doesn't seem radical and from 1 year to next, but add it up over 5 years and 10 years, especially, you can see the extent of tremendous changes that happen. But in a world that existed before November 2022, the only competition was from fellow humans, right? Somebody graduating from one college vis-a-vis another college. But now there is a new person in the town, and that is the AI engine, which will beat anybody hands down, regardless of what university or college you're graduating from. So, and besides, academic curriculums tend to be sticky and they respond with a lag because there's a lot of thought that goes into it, not without any reason. So in this environment, the half-life of a degree is going to be very high. Okay, your degree is going to be pretty much redundant within a year or two. Okay, so future is going to be interdisciplinary because the competitive, the new guy who is in the town and is your big competition is fairly interdisciplinary. I could be asking about Schrodinger equation on my ChatGPT window in one instance, and then I could be asking about Shakespeare's poetry in the next instance, and it will answer all of that in equally admissible ways. So in a world where you're competing with not only the depth, but the breadth of it, it's a tough world. So it will require constant reskilling and upskilling, and that is really where the separation of degree as a means of education becomes much more acute. The education will have to be an ongoing process, and the degree is only going to be so much useful. And that also applies to the faculty, because faculty, of course, will also find themselves to be using these agents as an assistant, co-teaching, partnerships, mentorship programs, etc. So it would require a lot of upskilling for the faculty themselves, because we are not prepared, frankly, for the world that's coming in, and it would require a lot of collaboration between different quarters of the operation. It also require a bit of a mindset shift. And mindset shift, I'll give you an example from the ChatGPT era itself. In November 2022, when the GPT came in, within a month, everybody was howling and saying, well, this could be used for cheating, etc. And students will not be submitting original assignments, etc., etc. But all of that suddenly has now lost its steam. We have all come to accept the world that is with ChatGPT, and believe it or not, we will have to embrace that world. So that requires a mindset shift. Even if today we believe that I'm an exceptional teacher and what I do in that class cannot be replicated by an AI agents, to think harder, to critically examine that, because it's not really true in the first principle basis. But the good news is it's not entire replacement, it's augmentation. The roles will evolve, the responsibilities will evolve. And of course, there are some ethical considerations also in play that have to be addressed at some point by the big engines which are going to be preparing these things. So yeah, so I stop there and I open it up for further discussion. I hope I was audible in this later segment. So sorry for that disruption. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You are.
Okay, great. All
So
right.
shall we move to the question and answer session?
Yes, please. Yeah.
Participants, please note that if you have any questions, queries, or anything you need to say, please use the raise hand feature at the bottom of your screen. We will then be able to give you the necessary permissions.
Yeah. Is anyone speaking? I can't hear. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, sir, you're audible.
Okay, but I can't hear if anybody is speaking.
Dr. Smita Bandare Kamath, could you please unmute yourself from your end and ask the question? Manu, I hope you have given the permission to Smita
Yes,
Bandare
yes, sir.
Kamath. You
Yes.
have. Now
Ma'am,
I'm
Smita,
requesting
you will
Smita Bandare Kamath.
You can type it
she
in the
says she's
chat. I can
able
read
to
your chat.
unmute.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
If you want to type.
Yeah.
Good evening, so you can hear me now?
Yes, I can. I can.
Okay,
Good evening, Ms. Smita. Yeah.
Sir, this is relating to research.
Yeah.
I like to do qualitative research. So recently I had uploaded my work and asked ChatGPT. This is a free version, not a paid one. And
Right.
I asked them, based on the data that was provided, qualitative data, give me a model with a diagram. So they threw up a diagram which looked quite impressive, but on a closer look, I realized that this is not what I really wanted. In the sense,
Right.
there was a lot of conflict in the diagram. And then, of
Right.
course, I came across something called AI hallucination. So in that
Yeah.
context, I want to know how much, in fact, chat gives a disclaimer at the bottom that they could be factually wrong and things like that. So
Right.
when we do employ AI, what is the credibility? I mean, it looks great, it sounds great,
Yeah.
but there could be issues. Secondly, I don't think there is yet a common uniform percentage of AI that is permissible. I mean, I'm not yet aware about it because it varies from journals to journals. And
Right.
is it yet in the process of finalizing, or what is a permissible, level according to you? These are the two issues that your opinion would definitely help a lot.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
thank you so much.
So thank you, Ms. Smita. I think it's a valid question and observation that you have made. So I go back to the same statement that I made in the beginning, that what we have today is quite impressive. But what we are going to have today, what we are going to have in the next 5 years, is going to make what we have today look very silly. Okay, so at the moment you're right. Yes, that there are certain pockets where AI starts hallucinating a little bit, and particularly with respect to spatialized research, because most of the data that it has been trained on is the publicly available data. And as you know, that the research world is famously protected behind the firewall of these different publication houses, Elsevier, and so on and so forth. So it doesn't really have that. It hasn't been tested that extensively on that data, but there are fairly open source publications also, like the ones where you upload your working papers. Archive is one for the scientific community. For social sciences, you have couple of choices. So it does have some bit of training on it. It can use all of that and throw up something which might not be the perfect thing as of yet. But moving forward, we'll see that that thing will also get fine-tuned highly, because this is one of the areas where there's going to be a lot of demand for it. And I already have seen some apps which do literature review, and I'll we can probably share those names later. where it does present you some nice citations and visually represents for you where things are coming in and going out, through those arrows. So it's there, but not quite there. But that is not to say that it won't be useful in the next 6 months, or it's going to stay the same in the next, 2 years. Things are going to change. Now, with your second thing about what is the permissible limit that's allowed in research, nobody has a clue as of now. Okay? The first response, of course, everyone is that no, this is AI generated. It's got to be bad. It's not something that we are in the air for. But if you examine critically, and you look at, let's say, I look at one of my research papers, okay, and I look at my different sections of it, the econometrics equation, the data cleaning, etc., etc. And when I really critically examine it, I can't find anything that I cannot regenerate or replicate through AI in the same research paper. Much of the research that happens in social sciences is getting published in B category, C category, and so on, right? Those are research papers which the AI can easily build at that level. Of course, something original, something more rigorous, etc. It's something that is still quite a distance away, but not that great deal elite. Mathematics Olympiad, it has already established itself as a contender for a silver medalist in mathematics, International Mathematics Olympiad, which the problems, require a great deal of creativity and conceptual clarity. It's able to score as high as getting a silver medal in International Mathematics Olympiad. So it's quite up there. But then there are instances where it's not even able to tell you how many alphabets are there in the letter yellow. Okay. There are also instances like that. So it's definitely something that's imperfect. But moving forward, you can imagine that it's going to improve, and certainly there are going to be efforts made in the research direction which are going to specifically devote their fine-tuning and training this larger language model onto a specialized data set, and you might have things in that direction, much accurate things. I hope that sort of answers largely.
Manu, you can ask Cindy De Silva to ask the question.
From my personal experience, Ms. Smith, I can tell you that I had once used it to write a Mathematica code for solving a second-order integral function. Okay, it took me a couple of iterations with it, but I was able to get it in the ballpark. So it does impress me, if you ask me.
Yeah, thank you, sir, so much. I'll just share one instance where I was writing an article, sort of a fictional story, and I wanted to make it very crisp. And I asked ChatGPT to review it for me, and they did it so wonderfully. They identified sentences that required, how it could be reframed. Not that I copy pasted it, but it did give me another set of perception altogether. And I would want to appreciate the role that GPT is playing in our lives, be it research or creative writing or even AI generated images. They do give us a push for our creativity. I think that needs to be acknowledged. And your presentation was excellent, sir. Let me compliment you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you once again.
Thank you. Mr. Nigel, you have something to say?
Good evening, sir. My question.
Cindy De Silva is in queue. She has raised the hands.
Sorry.
So I would like Cindy De Silva to ask the question, if she is there. I'm wondering whether she could unmute herself and then ask the question.
So if she is not able to at the moment, could Sir Nigel continue with his query?
Nigel, yeah, that's fine.
Good evening. Thank you so much.
Good evening. Thank you.
I just wanted to know is what would be the applicability of copyright infringement issues with regard to GPT related or AI outputted content. So could you just maybe tell us about that with regard to maybe the academic world?
it is sort of a meta issue that straddles largely not just the academic world, but also other creative aspects like music generation, even image generation, and so on and so forth. And there, the stakes are even much higher because there are these artists who actually make a living on the basis of their work, right? They make a living on the basis of royalty and so on. So these are issues which I suppose will at some point be addressed through some collaborative effort nationwide across the states. And how the eventuality will look like is something that is anybody's guess. We have seen some debates about it a couple of months back when there was a lot of alarm that was raised upon how soon how soon certain corporations were actually pursuing artificial general intelligence (AGI), and there were calls to actually regulate it in some form or fashion. But it is still a work in progress, I suppose, and there is not a clear solution in sight. I mean, OpenAI itself has been rumored to infringe upon things that were not really publicly available, or at least not with consent. So there are a lot of gray areas, but I suppose at some point there will be regulations which will come out. At the moment, it's anybody's guess which direction it will take.
Thank you, sir. My second question was, anything academicians or teachers and lecturers could do can protect themselves, especially because the adoption of AI is, as you said, going to be needed on a platform one way or the other. Anything we could do to safeguard ourselves in such circumstances?
I would rephrase the question as not safeguarding, but actually reinventing. Okay. I would imagine that the role of faculty, the role of mentor, would significantly change, and it is already changing. If you think about it, you walk into a classroom, or let's say, you're pursuing an MBA degree. I mean, you can really ask yourself whether what I'm learning in these 30 hours by paying such a high amount of fees, is it really something that I won't be able to get it at almost a free and a costless basis through the AI? So the role of a teacher is definitely getting reshaped and reinvented. The closest that you will come to safeguarding it is by regulatory. For example, if a regulatory body decides that I'm only going to recognize an XYZ as a degree if you have been taught by a professor in full flesh and blood for the 30 hours or 30 credits, only then it will be a degree. So, but the regulator cannot force a market, right? The regulator can help define what is a degree, and therefore safeguard the role of a traditional professorial job, but it can really not make a student get a job or make sure that it remains employed. Okay. Ultimately, the market forces will determine a large part of it. And if something has become better, faster, and cheaper, we know for sure where the market forces tend to lead. They tend to lead to a disruption and reinvention.
Thank you, sir.
So the last question for today would be to Hepzibah Arigala. Hepzibah Arigala, please ask your question.
Good evening, sir. I have same problem like Smita ma'am. Just she mentioned like when she asked a question about something she needed regarding her research, she couldn't find the exact answer. So I had an experience like when I'm doing some proposal, and I had, I made it on my own, but while my colleague is reviewing it through ChatGPT, almost my ideas came. Like what I wrote in my proposal, those ideas only came in those, and I didn't use any ChatGPT or any other AI tools. So how did this happen? Like He just told me that, have you used any AI tools like this? I mean, while writing this proposal. So how could, how did this happen?
So it's a very specific question, really. But my guess would be that it really depends upon the extent of originality you would place on the particular idea, right?
Okay.
And one big lesson that I learned in my PhD days was the following. Every time I was this 25-year-old guy who was doing a PhD and excited by the new world that has opened up, the world of social sciences. And I would think of these different ideas, and I would think that, I am the first one in the world to think of it. I would go to Google Scholar and type in my idea, and I'll find 35,000 citations already been on that particular idea. So, the hard lesson that I learned in my entire research experience is that 99% of the times, the idea that I'm thinking has already been thought of by someone. It's very rare that I would think of something extremely original. That can sometimes be just blind luck, or sometimes it just comes from your deep expertise in a particular area, and you know exactly where those vacuum spots or the blind spots are.
Okay.
Yeah, but most of the time I would not be surprised if it's something that somebody's already done.
But I'm quite surprised, sir.
Okay, no,
Also,
it's sure, but I'm just talking my experience here.
yeah.
It's possible that of course, there is a feature in ChatGPT which basically says that, do you want ChatGPT to use your data as a training data set, and you can click on it and not give your consent also. I think the default mode is that you don't give that consent, but who knows if
Yes.
that may happen. But yeah,
And
it's a stretch possibility. It's not something that I would sort of really put my money on.
okay. And how far I could trust this ChatGPT while doing my research for my literature review and
You shouldn't trust it. You shouldn't trust it. You shouldn't trust it. Not yet. Not yet. You shouldn't trust it.
Okay.
You need to sort of use it in a complementary way. Okay.
Okay.
So there are many ways in which one can significantly improve the quality of writing, for example. Which is what I have done several times. Especially the PhD student that I was guiding after 2022. I asked that person to use ChatGPT's incredible way with writing quite extensively. Okay, we would write something up, and then he would put in the paragraph and say, well, could you write it a little bit better? And an output would come. Now, of course, that output sometimes could just be too off the mark. It could be too flowery in English. It could be too indirect, and it could have some logical gaps in between. So we would fix it, but at least we would get the basic structure and basic flow right. It would be like as if a copywriter or a editor is reading our manuscript and finding mistakes with grammar, with phrases, with sentence structure, and so on. So you could do these stuff quite easily with it.
Okay.
You could do some unstructured data analysis with it, etc. But citations, etc., it's still a lot fuzzy on that aspect. So you can't trust it for reasons I mentioned, that a lot of it is not a publicly available data, but it's going to get there. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
Thank you,
Yeah.
sir.
Don't trust it blindly. Yeah. No problem.
So,
Dr. Vipul,
yeah.
I'm afraid you're not getting late for your dinner. There is one question by
No, I'm not.
Ramrai Naik.
Sure.
If you could answer Ramrai Naik's question, we would appreciate. That would be the last question.
No problem, sir. I'm happy to take questions. I usually skip the dinner.
Ramrai Naik, would you please unmute your mic and ask the question to Dr. Vipul?
Dr. Vipul, I had already put my question. You must have read it.
Sorry,
so basically,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, the question is mostly because there is a lot of confusion among students and faculty, and almost we are divided whether to use artificial intelligence or not. So if we at all had to come up with a policy framework for educational institute and sort of clear it out for everyone, what are some of the fundamental points that we should include?
It's really a question that's in the conventional way. It's really something that's above my pay grade, because I am too deep into the technological implementation aspect of it. I was demonstrating to you the chatbot, and the policy level is a much more meta level question, and you have to really think it through the vantage point of different stakeholders. The immediate reaction of the policymakers when ChatGPT released and the months thereafter was that, this is a dangerous thing and we must proceed with caution. Okay, there was one big argument of that nature. Then there was also another side of the argument that, look, you can't, stop an idea whose time has come, right? That variety, and let the market determine where things take us. That discussion also has not settled into any equilibrium so far. Okay? It is still, the two sides are still jostling with each other, and it remains very unsettled. So thinking about an AI policy that could possibly serve us, for the next 20 years is I think besides the question. It sort of defeats the very purpose, because we have a thing that is very early stages so far, right? It's almost like asking something that, what is the policy on 5G when you are really sitting in 2001 and early, communication networks. As always, I think there's going to be a multi-layered view on everything. We have a technology that could also substitute us and could also be used as a complement. It's not a straightforward black and white situation. It's a gray area. But the market, which we ultimately all cater to, we are not just catering to, as faculty, but also as people who are preparing the next generation. The market will therefore, discipline any such initiative. Will certainly have to. So, yeah, but that's the most that I can probably say about it. Anything beyond this that I say will not be something that I would be sure of. But thank you so much for your compliments. When you mentioned Yuval Harari, is one of the people that I also enjoy reading and listening to, although he makes a rare appearance in podcasts, but it's always a delight.
Yeah, I almost felt like listening to one of the audiobooks.
Thank you so much.
Dr. Vipul,
Yes, Dr.
I understand. Dr. Vipul, I understand you are also available for any sessions, training programs, etc., for institutions. So would you please briefly tell about that, your services that you are going to offer?
So one of the things that I would like to do, and I tend to do, is that the presentation that I had today was largely just just talking about it. Okay, there were some technical aspects that I touched upon, and some logical basis that I briefly touched upon, but it was not really a hands-on thing. Okay? And I hate it. I hate anything that is just a talk shop thing. I would love to sort of have people get their hands dirty, because once you open the hood and you see what's under the hood, that's when you get much more confident of dealing with what's under the hood. So one thing that I like to do is basically help people create these personal chatbots, okay, and which is essentially one step towards creating these personalized AI agents. And that involves really going through the entire architecture of it, the technology, and the how to execute the technology on different platforms, and the one that I was also showing at some point. Now, this does sort of demand, or at least it makes it look like that you should need some knowledge on coding, etc. But frankly, no. You can approach the class with just zero background in coding, zero background in technology, zero background in maths, and I particularly make sure that we take it from the scratch. We take it from the ground up, ground zero. So that is one thing I do. So towards the end of the session, or the multiple of sessions, people are able to understand the whole way how technology works. They're able to use it, make personal chatbots, have some fun along the way, experimenting with it, and so on. And once you have got your hands dirty to that level, suddenly your view and perception about it and your understanding about it changes. Something inside you flips after you get your hands dirty into anything. It's true with life, right? So like to do that. So creating AI-based chatbots is one thing that I certainly like to do, covering all of that. Demonstrating how it can be used in these different tasks that I spoke about, that are a part of the portfolio of tasks that a faculty has to do, is something that I am happy to discuss and demonstrate. So these are largely things, hands-on things that I would like to do and demonstrate. I could possibly do it. Yeah.
Manu, would you please take us through to the thank you session?
Yes, sir, I'll do that now. So I really enjoyed today's session, I wanted to say, and I especially really found the question about AI policies for institutions. I found that very insightful.
Thank you so much. Although I didn't really answer it in as much detail as it deserves to be answered, but frankly, what we are dealing with is something that's still not definite. So it's a little premature to answer a question on policy of a thing that is still evolving and evolving quite rapidly. For example, as I mentioned, AI agents are going to be released by OpenAI in just a couple of weeks. So there you have it. Sam Altman, who is the CEO of OpenAI, mentioned in one of these public conversations that artificial general intelligence, not the generative intelligence, but general intelligence, just how generally intelligent human beings are, is not too far away. It's something that's quite possible with the existing hardware that we have. So interesting times.
Yeah, it's definitely something that should be discussed more, I feel. Shall
Great.
we move on?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for organizing this, Professor Ravindranath, Professor Kamath. Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity. Thanks to Vaishnavi, Neha, and yourself for coordinating this and organizing it. Thanks to all the participants for staying for so long. I just recognize that it's almost 2 hours, so 1 hour beyond its designated time. Of course, we had a little disruption, but even then, I think I've sort of outdone myself by my own standards of extending talks. I remember quite vividly, Professor Ravindranath asked me the first thing, that would 1 hour be enough? I said it's never enough for a teacher. That's probably happened. But anyway, thanks for staying. And if you have any questions, you can certainly shoot me on my email address. I'll just paste it on the chat box very quickly. It's very simply my name, dr.vipulmathur@gmail.com. You could reach out to me there, and we could have an engagement there. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor, for sharing the email ID with us. Yeah. Manu, continue, please. Manu, you can tell about Monday's session.
Yes, sir. Sorry, I had a technical issue on my end. It's resolved now.
Yeah.
To move on to the vote of thanks, on behalf of DCT's Srinivasa Sinai Dempu College of Commerce and Economics, I extend our deepest gratitude to Dr. Vipul Mathur for his time and expertise today. His insights on the application of AI for classroom management and assessment have been immensely valuable, broadening our understanding of how AI can empower educators to optimize classroom engagement and assessment practices. Our thanks also go to each participant for your keen involvement and commitment to learning. Your engagement has made this faculty development program a success. We are also grateful for the collaborative support of our partner institutions, Chanakya College, Bengaluru, Choice College of Arts and Commerce, Pune, Swami Sajanand College of Commerce and Management, Gujarat, and Dempe College of Arts and Science, Goa. Lastly, as we look toward our final session on Monday, we are excited to welcome Dr. Anil Kumar Garag, who will guide us through problem-based learning in management education, in addition to the theoretical underpinnings. This session will provide practical applications illustrating how PBL can be used to foster critical thinking, real-world problem solving, and collaborative learning, which are essential skills in today's educational landscape. Thank you once again, and we look forward to another engaging session on Monday. Have a wonderful evening.